Hello there and welcome back to the studio today. It's a brand new day today and we're going to apply the second color pass onto this painting. The first thing I'm going to do is take a very tiny bit of medium. So the medium that I'm going to use today is, let's use a different brush, is Liquin Original. So we're just going to apply a little bit of our oil. I'm going to go ahead and mix the value scale on my palette of flesh tone. The same little value scale you've seen me mix up. Now sometimes I will tint my value scale. Let's see if I can get a little closer to you. So sometimes I will tint my value scale depending on the situation. So today, or at least at this point in the painting, we're going to be fairly concerned with color, and we'll put in some little minor adjustments here and there with the drawing. And I'm talking about the face. So I'm tinting the colors a little bit more orangey, as I read in some of the comments. And again, thank you all so much for your comments and your suggestions. Don't be afraid to let me know where I've messed up. So with the first color pass, again, the emphasis was on the drawing and the value. And now in the second color pass, we're really going to try to push the color. And we're not going to copy the photo reference's colors either. Again, it's not about copying. See if I can get you a nicer close-up shot of the palette. Alright, so now we have a very orangey type of flesh tone value scale. Now we're going to take a different brush, apply a little more medium here. And I like to apply more medium as the number of layers increases. So very, very thin now. And we're going to get the yellow ochre and a very nice mixture in this area here. This is a very simple combination here of the cadmium red, yellow ochre, neutralized with pretty much all of the cool colors. And now I'm just going to use the maul stick to help support my hand. Now the problem with oiling it out right now is just glaring a lot. So we're going to take that color we mixed up and we're going to apply an almighty glaze. Very, very thin. So the photo reference, the problem with the photo reference is it blasts the, it just blasts the color. So we're going to apply a very thin application of this color. So I'm just very thinly glazing this warmer orangey tone onto the value arrangement that we had figured out before. This is why I said color is something I kind of saved for last, because it's something that can always be easily modified. Now adding a little bit more, we're gonna go to this little region of the value scale. Now remember I said it's easier to glaze a little bit darker than it is to glaze lighter. So we're going to go a little bit darker with that glaze, and a tiny bit of Alizarin permanent is going to be helpful. I just remembered, I didn't tell you what the colors on my palette are. I'm sure most of you know by now, as you've been watching these videos daily. But anyway, let me read them out. Titanium white, flake white, burnt umber, alizarin permanent, cadmium red medium, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, ivory black. And if you want to know, if you're new to this channel and you want to know exactly what materials I'm using in terms of the brands and all that, you can always go ahead and scroll down to the description box below and all of that information will be typed up for you. So we want kind of a middle deep pink. A little bit more alizarin permanent. Very thin. Kind of a deep pink like an orangey pink that's not too saturated. So again, the burnt umber that we applied in here is really helping with that, to bring down the saturation. All right, so let's pick our little area to glaze. So right around here. Gotta make sure not to make it too bright. Now, like I said, I think I said this yesterday. Like I said yesterday, now we're reaching the point really where we don't need the photo reference anymore. It's really about what the painting looks like as a painting, as a whole. I'm not trying to give out any excuses for my drawing mistakes. I know that there are drawing mistakes here. But again, it's really what look you're after with your painting. And I want something that looks naturalistic, not photorealistic. And again, nothing wrong with photorealistic painting or anything like that. Now it almost looks like she's blushing, so we'll fix that, don't worry. It's not that there's anything wrong with the photorealist ideology. It's just that that's not what I'm after. I want paintings that look naturalistic. And the nice thing about a glaze is if I don't like it, I can easily take it out and just further refine and further adjust the colors. And this is how we're building the more complex colors now. Complex doesn't mean it has to be like neon greens and purples and things, but just subtle in nature. And here's another trick that I'm going to show you. I think this is called broken color. Yeah, but don't quote me on that. So we have a dry brush, and what I'm going to do is kind of break this little patch of color and just keep spreading it, diffusing that color. So really, we have the most control now over the color that we could possibly have. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber, my drawing color, and a little tiny bit of the red into here. We're going to take note of this point here on the mouth. We're going to shift this. We're going to shift it ever so slightly to the right over here, but very tiny. Remember, portraiture, it's probably not a good thing to say, but I think portraiture is the story of how a bunch of tiny little things either made my day or ruined my day. Oftentimes my day is ruined by tiny little things, but I don't let that get to me. And again, I'm really trying to bring the experience to you. You know, in life we really do make mistakes, but we learn from them. Alright, so I know it looks kind of sloppy, but I just pushed the corner of the mouth a little bit further out. Now while we're at it, let's go ahead and mix up a little value scale of reds for the lips. So burnt umber, alizarin permanent for the darker areas, cadmium red for the middle, a little bit of flake, in the middle, flake white that is, yellow ochre for the lighter areas. Now this little tiny value scale is very similar to this one, but this one is more compressed in terms of the fact that it's just, the values are much closer to each other, and they're just red. They're more red than this. This is closer to the orange. So now that we have our little value scale, So now that we have our little value scale, we're going to go ahead and start to modulate these little planes just so that they look like they're resting on the same form. And by modulate, I mean to just adjust these values so that this looks like it makes sense, like it fits in the same space. Now with a different brush, we're going to mix up another color for glazing. So we're going to have, let's say, a little bit of cadmium red medium, the tiniest bit of alizarin permanent, and then this color that we already mixed up, a little more alizarin permanent, yellow ochre, and let's take some of this value. And we want it to be a little bit on the darker side, orangier side, and kind of I don't know, like a maroon almost. And we're going to apply a very thin glaze, letting the transparency underneath do quite a bit of the work. See how we're creating kind of a stained glass-like effect, where the layer underneath is shining through just like sunlight. And of course, with a clean and dry brush, we get to select exactly how much of that color we want to show. So I want less of it to show there, so I will subtract some of it with a clean brush and diffuse it onto this area. And we'll do the same kind of thing for the other eyelid. Just letting the light underneath shine through, again, just like stained glass. And that's how you get your complex colors. Now we're going to get the same brush we used to mix up the value scale of flesh tone in the beginning and just clean it off. Alright, so now that the brush is all cleaned off, you know, sometimes I wish I could be like Bob Ross and just, like whatever he did, like he would smack the brush on the side. Do you know what I'm talking about? Anyway, so now that this is clean, I'm going to apply a little more Liquin. Just kind of dab some of it off, just so that it's inside of the little synthetic bristles. And we're going to mix up a very dark color now, so I don't know. Let's mix over here. So alizarin permanent, ultramarine blue, alizarin permanent and ultramarine blue can give you a very, very dark value. Just those colors on their own. And with a little bit of burnt umber, let's just make sure that it's not too purpley. And we're going to take this and apply a very dark value onto the hair. See how, so the hair was still under, it was still an underpainting. So see how much darker we can go than the raw umber that we used for the initial underpainting. So now we're really going to be able to push the value scale. So we're just going to look for the darkest shapes first for the hair. Make sure that those are well established. Goes down to about there. This goes about here. Sharpen that edge there. Not sure if I wanted to do that. Let's get another brush, clean, dry brush, and just subtract what we just did. Alright, so some more dark shapes exist down here. And let's see. Let's suppose there exists another little dark shape down here. See how by establishing the darks, we really get the kind of the effect of the hair very, very quickly. Let's see, where are there some more darks? All the way down here. So now that we've made some adjustments to the portrait, I think it's time to oil out the rest of the painting just like we did with the face and apply the second color pass to the rest of the painting. We're going to use a larger brush to oil out the rest of the painting, and I'm just going to use the Liquin. And again, this is just to apply another layer of oil over these surfaces. So now we're going to run into some little trouble. As I suspected, I knew I took a risk when I put the tape onto the painting, the painter's tape to hold that palette. Yeah, I kind of knew I was taking a risk there. So the paint looks like it is not, it looks like it just lifted off the layer of color that we had before, but that's all right. We'll be able to mix that in again, and I suspect the other areas that I put the tape to hold that palette will probably lose the color as well. And don't worry about something like that. That I can just take off with the paper towel for the most part. Not a complete disaster there, but a little tiny disaster. It'll be fine. Yeah, so that completely took off the first color pass on these spots, but it's not a big deal. I'll go into that off camera and just put that color back in. I mean, you saw me mix the colors for those areas yesterday anyway. So I was going to go to the hand now. So I'm going to mix up a glazing color for the hand. I'm going to use a tiny bit of Alizarin permanent, yellow ochre, flake white, perhaps not that pink, so let's tint it with umber. So a little bit of burnt umber just to bring down the saturation a little bit. Remember, it's usually a little easier to glaze and to layer, just layering in general, a darker value, a darker color. A little bit of yellow ochre, tiny bit of sap green. Alright, so this ought to be alright to glaze now. So it looks like some of this paint came off too. I think that's my fault then. this must not have dried completely. I think this layer of paint was about 3 days old. So yeah, it's all right. I'm gonna apply a very thin glaze now. Maybe just to these regions on the light. So I'm gonna have to mix up some opaque colors for that. All right, so back to the flesh tones that we had on the palette. We're gonna use Flake White into this little area. I think this color should be about good. Yep, that should be about good. And I just wanted the hand to be a little bit darker and a little bit warmer, but not bright red either. So I'm gonna put in a little bit of sap green just to calm down the heat of the color that we use to glaze. So I guess this is gonna be kind of a in between of half glazing, half just regular painting. Regular meaning just painting opaque. Just trying to recover the little spots of color that were lost. Yeah, so a lesson to be learned. It may take more than 3 days for an area to dry, even if you're using a fast drying medium. That's just the nature of it sometimes. It's all right. All right, so I just covered up the little patches of paint that that peeled off around where I put the tape before. So I think I'm gonna go into some of the smaller shapes for the sweater. So let's mix the colors that we had for the sweater. So we had a kind of a earthy red. So I'm using a little bit of Alizarin with burnt umber, some flake, a little bit of flake white, tiny bit of cadmium red medium, back to the burnt umber, back to the flake, a little more alizarin permanent, and the flake. I am making yet another value scale for this color, just because I'm actually going to add a little bit more refinement to the sweater, but not much. A little bit more cadmium red. All right, I think that's about good. And I'm gonna wanna have a brush for the darker values and a brush for the lighter values. So let's clean this one off here. So I think this will be the brush for the darker values. Let's see here, let's get this one. And this will be the one for the lighter values. So let's go ahead and put in some of the little shapes here for this sweater. So this kind of reminds me of something. I am so fortunate to live very close to the National Gallery of Art in DC. Now I don't live in DC, but I live pretty close to the National Gallery. And while I was there, I went there I think last weekend, and while I was there, there was someone talking about the Rembrandt painting. And here's the cool thing, you know, the self-portrait, the Rembrandt self-portrait everyone thinks about when you say Rembrandt? Yeah, it's the one that I tried to do a master copy of one time on my YouTube channel. So I was just looking at the painting, and then someone walked up to it and was like, why didn't Rembrandt ever finish the hands? If you ever look at that painting, the hands are not that finished. And I thought to myself, someone's complaining about an unfinished area on a Rembrandt, whereas I see it as kind of like gold. It's like me seeing how the artist, I was going to say how Rembrandt actually worked. And to me, that is so powerful. This is a similar area to the Rembrandt that I was looking at. I don't want to do too much for this. Just like Rembrandt didn't want to do too much for the hands and stuff that he was working on in that self-portrait. He really wanted the viewer to observe the portrait, the face, and feel the psychological connection that we feel whenever we look at a Rembrandt. But again, it's like he left some footsteps for us to see like how he actually worked, how he thought. It's pretty neat, I think. It's pretty sad that some folks see it as not a good thing, that some areas are left unfinished. And you don't want to finish everything to the same degree. So now I'm putting in a little bit of light area into this region of the, I don't even know what you call this, the arm of the sweater. Yep, some advanced vocabulary for you. The arm of the sweater. Yep. So we're just putting in a little bit of a halftone here with the light brush, just to kind of differentiate this shape from this shape. Maybe we'll leave some of these outlines so you can see the layering. Who knows? Maybe someone 200 years from now or something will look at this and see this area and be like, oh wow, so that's how they did it. Who knows? Who knows? A little more of a shape back here. And so now it's time to stand back and see what the painting looks like at a distance. I'd say even at this distance away, I think we're still a little too close. So let's move a little further back. Now I'd say to right about here. So we're exactly, oh, I can't know exactly, but we're about 8 or 10 feet away from the painting. And this is going to be the image that people are going to see. At first glance, this is going to be the image that will draw people towards or away from the painting. Just like in that Rembrandt self-portrait, I can see and feel the strength of that painting from this distance. And it's so powerful, and then it really makes me want to come closer to the painting to observe it. But really, this is the distance that you want to strengthen the visual power that your paintings have. And another thing I should talk about is the camera angle that I've had with respect to the painting this entire time. I'll show you why I don't like to keep the camera right in the center in front of the painting. So this is what the painting looks like when we are almost right front and center with it. See the nasty glare? And this is what the painting looks like when we're kind of at an angle. So let me just move the camera and the tripod so you can see. Sorry for the shakiness. See how bad the glare gets? And I guess you can also, now that I'm moving the camera, you can also see the vantage point that I look at when I'm working. This is how I use photo references. So there is the photo reference. There is the painting. Photo reference. Painting. Now the reason I work like this is just so I don't copy what I'm looking at. Here you can see them both together. And it's just so that I don't copy what I'm looking at. It's really about interpreting visual information. See how far away I am from the TV screen that has the photo reference. I mean, of course, to be completely honest, I prefer to work from a live model. I wish that I could have a model there in front of me all the time, but just due to certain circumstances when it comes to the filming and production and all that stuff, it can get really difficult. But in the future, hopefully I'll be able to have my own models there in front of me. And I think it's just much, I don't know, for me personally, I connect a little bit more with the painting when it's the painting and live model, painting and live model. But anyway, I try to assimilate painting from life as much as I possibly can, because that's where I would have a model stand if I were actually working from a live model. That being said, I think I'm going to let the painting dry now. So we've applied the second color pass, and it's up to you. Leave in the comments down below whether you want me to continue the painting, whether you want me to add, I don't know, more refinement to the hand or something, or to the face. But to be honest, I think that I'm going to leave the face alone. I have other ideas for projects and things to do in the studio. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that these videos help you out, and I'll see you again in another 24 hours. But before I leave, for those of you that are still watching, you saw now how I like to work from photo reference with the television screen at an angle like that. So those of you that work from photo references sometimes as well, how do you like to set up your photo reference? So that's going to be the question of the day. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow.